I believe God is calling each body of believer to write and release songs through our churches, and in this video, I'm going to tell you why. Hey, my name is Brian Bolivar, and I am the worship leader here at Rock Harbor Church, and I have been leading worship professionally for over a decade now, and I've been writing songs since I was a teenager. I believe part of my calling is to write and record and release original worship music, and I believe there's so many of us that God's calling to do the same thing. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the practical and spiritual tips of why I believe that we should be doing that in and through our churches. And if you'd like access to online courses and coaching for your worship and tech ministry, head to churchfront.com and set up a free strategy call today. So the first practical thing in writing songs for your church is that nobody knows the needs and the voice of your church culture better than you do. True, the professional songwriters know how to write songs for the big church, and yes, many themes are similar across the board, but nobody knows the people that are sitting in the third row of your church better than you, and being able to take that voice of expression and write that type of song and sing it in the congregation is a powerful thing. Number two is if we are only pulling songs from the big churches, the main three that we all know, then we literally have to wait until we get new songs in order to introduce those themes and topics to our churches. Number three, there are literally only like 5 up-tempo songs in the entire church catalog. Of course, there are more than that, but the main ones that we all play. So we have the power to change that by sitting down and writing our own. Next thing is writing songs with other people, because co-writing is a very common way to write and release songs in today's music culture. And honestly, me personally, I mainly only co-write these days. And in that process, you build bonds and relationships. So in the context of a worship and tech team, you can really strengthen and build relationships through the process of writing songs for your church. Number 5, practical tip is as we record the songs that we sing on Sundays, our church is able to listen to those songs throughout the whole week. Just like with the radio or Spotify playlists, when our songs are available, that way the entire congregation can kind of lean in and understand the message that those songs are communicating and be ready for Sunday, as those songs can bless them throughout the entire week, not just as we play them on Sunday mornings. And number 6, as Jake shared in another video, it's easier than ever to actually multi-track record your services. There's so much technology, and your soundboard at your church probably can do multi-track recording already. So the bar to be able to start recording, of course there's much more to releasing songs than just being able to track. However, the first step after writing songs is being able to track. And the way the technology is, it's simpler than ever to do that. Now, for the spiritual reasons that I believe that churches should be writing and releasing original music, the first one is one we all know, is that in Psalms, it calls us to sing a new song unto the Lord. So, in my mind, that doesn't mean that everyone has to do it, but also that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it, because we're called to by Scripture to actually sing a new song. So we take a step further. We sing a new song, then we record it, and then we release it. And number 2 of the spiritual reasons why we should be writing and releasing is I know from my own personal experience, many songs, or at least ideas, have been birthed out of my personal times with the Lord. So as we are doing our devotional time, or maybe spontaneous times of worship, or whatever the case may be, as we are building relationship with God and leaning on God, and He's speaking these things to us, I've found many times that there might be a theme that I might bring into a writing situation, and then someone else, God may be speaking the same exact thing because He needs to get that message out through those people. So for me personally, it's a way to connect with God in a deeper way. And that's just, as being a creative person, that's part of my own journey, my own process. But I know that I'm not the only one. And as we do that, we strengthen our relationship and bring that into worship as we share these songs. And number 3, yes, songwriting and creating is definitely a calling. And there might be people on your team that aren't interested in that at all. But as leaders, if we are interested in that, and whether we do it personally ourselves or not, we can still lean on other people on our team, and we might be helping someone discover and develop a calling that they didn't even know they had in a safe environment like in a church. Because as singing these songs, if we're on the worship team, we understand how music works, we understand how that stuff comes together, and we might be untapping a resource in someone that they didn't even know they had as we start to write and release and record music in our own church. Next thing, we know that God uses music in a powerful way. I have something I've thought about a lot. The power of God and the emotional response that music is, I don't know, I feel like God uses it as like a superpower. So we've seen how there's been songs out there that have been written by some maybe lesser known or even amateur songwriters, but God has used them in a powerful way to reach people, and people are attracted attracted to a church from the music even before just the church culture. That might be the way to bring them in. And not that we're using the songs as like an advertisement for the church, but also God is able to use whatever he wants to bring people to him. So if we're spending the time to write and put out these songs, then it can give people the opportunity to hear something and be impacted by what God's doing at a particular church and bring them in and get them plugged into that body. So number 5, I believe that stepping out in faith can make a huge impact on any body of believers. And in context of this, as we step out in faith to write, and everyone starts at their own level. We don't have to start off being a professional songwriter. We're not going to write "How Great Is Our God" or "Trust in God" or whatever the big song of the time might be as our first song. Who knows? Maybe you will. But in my case, I certainly haven't. But every time we do it, every time we sit down and put pen to paper or finger to keyboard, we're stepping out in faith, believing that, God, what do you want to speak to me? What are you saying through this church? What are you doing right now in this season through this body of believers? And how can I articulate that to bring people closer to you? As we do that, we're obviously growing our faith because we're trusting God, and that can and will filter through your congregation in a big way. And number 6 of the spiritual reasons why I think that we should be writing and releasing our own church's music is there's so many great songs out there, but oftentimes we might be tempted to use a song from one of the big churches just because it's cool or it's popular or because we hear that song on the radio or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that unless we do it just for that sake, just because it's cool, just because it's popular, not because it maybe fits our congregation. Now, not every song is going to fit every person's situation at church. Obviously, that's not even possible. However, what I'm pointing back to in the first point that kind of marries to this point is instead of having to rely on somebody else to hopefully write something that resonates with our congregation, which happens all the time, but more specifically, when we are the ones that are writing the songs, it's going to speak directly to the people that sit there because that's where God is speaking that particular thing to. So, we all know that music is a language and each church is its own representation. It's the bride, but there's all these different bodies of believers, all these different people that come together through these churches all across the country and the world. So in your town, in your area, God is speaking a specific message. So as we write these songs, it's going to help us to be specific and not just do things because they're cool or whatever, because honestly, I could think of a lot of examples of songs like the song "That's How I Fight My Battles." That song came from Upper Room that just came out of a spontaneous time of worship that God was speaking to that body of believers in Texas at that time. And then that song went outside of that. And of course, that's always a possibility. So I hope this video can show you that it's possible and I believe spiritual to have a community of songwriters in your church to communicate exactly what God is speaking. Now, like I said before, everyone starts in their own level. Nobody's going to write a giant song that's going to rule the world from their first one. But that doesn't matter because honestly, we're called to shepherd the people in front of us. That's no different than shepherding them with our songs. So I would challenge you, if you don't have one already, talk to your team. Is anyone interested in writing songs? Is there anyone on the team that's interested? Maybe they write, you don't even know about it because it's something they feel like is separate from church. And build that culture because again, just like with the worship team in and of itself, it's almost like a smaller sect of the worship team is that bond of the musicianship, the band of that aspect. Well, then there's actually a songwriting community within that God can do amazing things. So many of the big songs of churches have come out of churches that have honestly been like revolutionary. Music plays such an important role. Kind of back to that thought that I had where I believe when God's power is mixed with the power of music, which obviously he created for this, it's a superpower. So us taking the time and the energy and the ability to sit down and create music that God's speaking to our church can revolutionize and change the culture that we're in. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and to get more resources for your tech and worship team, head over to churchfront.com now, and I'll see you on the next video.